Good evening, South Africa and Zimbabwe. Welcome to Global Education's Virtual Expo. We've got a brilliant webinar for you today. We're just letting a few more people sign in while I give a bit of a short introduction to everybody and a little bit of housekeeping as well. These virtual webinars are all recorded, and we do them so that we can share them with the schools and yourselves. If you would like to receive it or share it with your school, just take a copy of the barcode or my contact details at the end of this webinar, and I'm more than happy to share it with you. Just a little bit about Global. We're a small family business that looks after students that are looking to study abroad. We do the entire process for you. We look after your consultations, your accommodation, your visas. We don't charge for any of our services. And the one good thing about it is that we really do care, and we're there even once you arrive on campus and once you graduate as well. So we're a lifelong friend, as we like to say. We've got a University of Manitoba with us here. We've got Sujitra, who's one of our key people that we work with at Manitoba. She looks after all our students that go there. I'm a big promoter of Canada in the North Americas. I think it's a great place for Southern Africans to go and study. So please do put your questions in the chat box, put them in the Q&A or the chat section. There is a survey after this webinar. And I'm enough talking from myself. I'm gonna hand over straight to Sujitra, who's lovely, and I'm sure you're in for a great webinar as well.
Thank you very much, George, and welcome everyone. As George mentioned, the Global Educations, it's a good partner with the University of Manitoba, so I'm very excited for their support. And you know, if you have inquiries or information that you wanted to find out, they are really knowledgeable, and I highly recommend for you to consult Global Education if you for further information. Thank you, George. I'm seeing that there's still quite a number of people to trigger into the session. So I'm just gonna kind of give it a little bit of a time to allow people to join us in the sessions. And in the meantime, perhaps maybe talk a little, I'll tell students and attendees today a little bit about the University of Manitoba while we were waiting. So University of Manitoba is located in Canada, and we are one of the research intensive universities, U15. It's the particular organizations that we are under the umbrella. So it's basically our Canada's top 15 research intensive universities. So I guess based on that information, what we have to offer at our university is going to be tons of opportunity for students who wish to pursue something a little more academic and you know, getting involved in research. But not only that, we also offer a variety of activities and services and supports that will basically open up a world for you. And definitely what we offer allows students to build the new connections and network and communities, and also opportunities in the future as well. All right, so I'm going to share screen, and hopefully, just give me a second. I just wanted to make sure that the screen will show up properly.
Just for the South Africans, we do know there's stage 4 load shedding, and we are recording this webinar, and it will be shared with you all as well. So please, if the power does go off, don't worry. Sudhitra is in Canada, and she'll have full control of the host, and the recording will not stop as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, George. And I'm going to welcome everyone to the University of Manitoba webinar today. And the feature presentations with the sessions today will focus on the financial aspect when it comes to planning for university abroad, okay? So my name is Sujitra, and I'm one of the student recruitment officer in the undergraduate program. So the focus of today will be about the undergraduate level. And the reason why I picked this specific topic is because it's one of those things that quite important when it comes to planning for a study abroad, right? But yet at the same time, it's a little hard to find this information right on the university website. If you are one of those people who look into this and start seeing it, you'll notice that it's kind of hidden. And yet at the same time, there's a lot of misinformation out there that sometimes eventually, like, you know, sometimes it's even result in a scam or hoax, things like that. And so I wanted to have this opportunity to lay it out particularly for the University of Manitoba, so you know the realistic expectation of what to expect when it comes to financial planning, right? And so the overview of the presentation will begin with what you need to know to begin, right? And then we also will be outlining the common types of financial supports that offer. Specifically, I will talk about the University of Manitoba's opportunities, but I believe that this same type of opportunities is going to be applicable to many institutions across Canada and also all over the world. So you will have some, hopefully the information you receive today will help you kind of be able to detect when there is something too good to be true or scam out there. So that will help prevent you from going in to become a victim. And also I'll share with you some tips for success in regard to, financial planning. And because at this event or this presentation, I won't really have time to go into the details of what we offer at the university or admission criteria or things like that. So I'm going to also outline some of the opportunities and events that will allow you to do more of a information seeking if you need that, and also contact information with that as well. And then we wrap the session up with the Q&A. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that the University of Manitoba campuses are located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene people, and on the homeland of the Métis Nations. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicated ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous community in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. All right, so let's begin with where do you even begin thinking about this, right? So the first place to start is the good mindset. And the fact is that education costs money. It's unfortunately not free, but yet at the same time, it is a type of investment that will last you a lifetime. Consider, unlike when you're buying a car, when you're buying a house, right? Those things can come and go. Once you get a degree, that degree stay with you forever. I'll share with you my personal experience. I came to the University of Manitoba and I received a master's degree in education. And with that, it changed my life in a way that I would never have been able to do if I didn't get this type of experience, right? So I want you to think about an education as a lifetime investment. So it's something that's gonna last forever. It costs some money, especially when you're looking at education abroad. It will cost you more than if you would have, done the education in your home country. So something to think about. And another thing that a lot of people, when they're looking at the financial aspect, they tend to look particularly for tuition, but realistically speaking, there are more, the cost of education is more than just tuition and books. It includes more, particularly the aspect of cost of living. And that is something that's pretty hard to decide because, country by country, the cost of living are really different. Give you an idea, in Canada, to rent a house, you need to buy insurance, and most time include, in addition to the rent that you need to pay, you also need to pay damage deposit. There are other things that kind of come into place as well. Now, the main idea is that I want you to take home with you is the fact that we don't want you to be discouraged by this high cost, and particularly for international students, it will be pretty expensive. But remember that this is a lifetime investment and your future kind of almost like depends on it to some certain extent, right? Now, the good news is places like University of Manitoba, we have information on our website. For example, as I show you here, umanitoba.ca/admissions, that you can see or you can seek information of the tuitions, estimated tuition. It's never going to be like a real cost or accurate cost because it really depends on many aspects, right? For example, our tuition is calculated based on the type and number of courses that you register each term. So it's not really quite possible for us to tell you exactly how much you're going to be paying your tuition. But having said that, we have an average cost that you can sort of follow, right? And for example, you see here on this list of tuitions or list of costs, you see that tuition is just one part of it. And just so you know, if you are start looking into institutions across Canada, one thing you will notice for sure is that our tuition is definitely lower when compared to institutions in Ontario, for example, or in BC, things like that. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why students are interested in seeking the University of Manitoba, because we offer quite affordable cost of tuitions. And in addition to tuition, you see that there are student fees. Another unique thing that I want to point out, particularly for University of Manitoba, is that our student fee package includes things like bus pass that allow you to take transportation, public transportation anywhere in Winnipeg, including in the student fees, and also a gym pass as well. And it is important to note that the cost that you pay here is deeply discounted price. So in a way, when you come to the University of Manitoba, you enjoy these benefits of really discounted price in terms of cost of transportation and also gym pass as well. So that's a good package for student fees. You also notice that I don't necessarily include the cost of living in terms of accommodation and food together with the rest of the tuition and student fees. This is because living on campus is just an option, it's not mandatory. So we know that a number of international students have relatives or friends or someone they know living here. And that's another reason why maybe perhaps they're looking at the University of Manitoba. And the good news is you can definitely choose to stay off campus. However, if you choose to stay on campus, knowing that the cost of living on campus will range from 13,000 Canadian dollars up to 14,000. And this includes cost of accommodation and also food, because if you stay on campus, at least in your first year, you will need to, you cannot cook. We're not allow you to cook, but we allow you to eat on campus, basically. So, and just a quick note on this, the difference between staying off campus and on campus, sometimes student has question about that. Living on campus allow for convenience, number one. Number two, it's also kind of quite safe so your parents gonna have that peace of mind knowing that you're going to be in a place where it's very safe and convenient to get to class. Another thing to mention is it built that spirit of on-campus community. So if you are looking for those kind of things, staying on campus is going to be definitely a big plus for you. All right, now let's touch and address right from the beginning some few facts to consider. One thing that we hear a lot all the time is some student looking for fully funded scholarship. Is that even realistic or possible? At the University of Manitoba, I can tell you right off the hop that we don't offer fully funded scholarship. So if you are thinking about coming to the University of Manitoba or studying abroad, coming to us, you do have to have a good, decent amount of financial backup from your end, okay? Another thing that we get asked a lot as well, and most times students don't realize this, in order for international students to come to study in Canada, they need to apply for the study permit. And this process, it doesn't organize or administer at the university, but rather by the visa office, the Canadian government, federal government that run this program. And most time they will require to see a proof of sufficient funding from the beginning. So with that in mind, you're already going to see that if realistically speaking, for you to come to study in Manitoba, the funding has to be there to begin with from your end. So if you don't have any funding at all, it's going to be very much impossible for you to pursue this plan of applying and get admission. So I thought I'd bring this up right from the get-go because I see, sometimes I will see students that apply without actually have any good backup funding, and then they end up not getting a study permit anyway, which is unfortunate for them. So I just wanted to bring it up. And of course, we're going to be touching on some useful resources to help you finance a little bit, partially of your tuition anyway or cost of studies. And we'll look into that right away in the next section. So in this sections, we want to talk about the common type of financial supports that usually offer that you can see at the University of Manitoba. To begin with, let's touch on the scholarship, okay? It is absolutely out there. A lot of people talk about scholarship. What is it? It is a monetary awards. The quick important note to make here is that you'll notice that it actually is a gift. from various organizations of people. It's actually not money that the University of Manitoba gives you. We are more like the vessel that, deliver the money to the students. And this is important to note because that's why there is criteria that very specific. Most time they'll be looking at your academic merit. So, how good you perform academically very much. But in addition to that, there might be some requirements or criteria that relate to community services or extracurricular activities, athletic skill, abilities. And these are basically identified or dictated by the organization or the donor. That's the term we use. The donor will identify, for example, maybe there's a family that perhaps, have done really well financially because of the education they receive at the University of Manitoba. And now they want to give back. They would come up with the scholarship that they identify, okay, they want to give this to a specific students coming from a certain faculties, having to do well academically, so on and so forth. So that's why the reason why I mentioned this is because you need to understand that the criteria are not set up by the university. The second thing to realize is that the type of scholarships, you're never going to see a real cash. You're never going to see it as like a real money, but rather it's going to be more like a credit that's sitting on your student's account. So it goes to pay or deduct it out of your tuition when you register for courses. So one of the main things that most students miss when they receive a scholarship offer is that they also have to follow the condition. For example, at University of Manitoba, you need to enroll in at least 24 credit hours, very much a full time, in order for this scholarship to kick in and deduct it out of your scholarship. And this is important because sometimes when students receive a scholarship offer, they are not able to follow through the condition, and therefore that offer is gone, right? So that is another aspect that important for students to realize. Now, the most common type of the scholarship at the University of Manitoba, first of all, I'm going to touch on at the time of admission or when you apply. We offer entrance scholarship. The entrance scholarship is going to focus on students that apply directly from high school. So you need to have high school as your highest level. If you are a current student in university or in college, you will not be able to be considered for entrance scholarship. Okay. The other thing about the entrance scholarship that we offer is that it's only applicable for the fall term. September starts. And the entrance scholarship, there's no specific application for entrance scholarship that students need to worry about. All they need to do is submit their undergrad application before a certain deadline of March the 1st. And this is for the fall term, September start. The criteria for consideration for entrance scholarship will be based out of your high school courses. So if the audience in here are from South African audience, we will be looking at your examination upon completion of your high school, okay? And you need to have at least 5 courses in there from our pre-approved list. For more information on this, let's touch on in the Q&A, or you can go on the website to learn more, okay? But knowing that the entrance scholarship is applicable to international students, and you might see that the award is quite tiny when compared to the tuition, but this is because the entrance scholarship, you don't have to compete with any other applicant. As long as you meet the criteria, the money will kick in, or the award will kick in. Again, given that you have to enroll at least 24 credit hours once you become a U of M student when you first start. Now, after you've passed that entrance scholarship, once you become a U of M current University of Manitoba students, there's other type of scholarships that's available to you as well. So there's 2 types, right? Internal award and external award. I'm going to focus on only the internal awards. That's what I'm here for. The external award, you will be doing Google search on it, but be careful, be mindful out there. There's a lot of scam out there, so be mindful of that fact, right? Things that sound too good to be true, chances are they're not real. Now, I'm going to focus on the internal awards that we have. So there's 2 types. So the first type the type that you can find on the award database, which basically are given specifically by in each faculties or departments. And there's also the other type that giving to the overall. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the one that's specific from faculty or department. And this is where you need to use the award database on our website to search for it. This, for example, this Bell MTS scholarship is one of the example. We have lots of scholarship in our award database. Now, what to look for is that when you do a search on the award database, you'll see the name of the institute. So you, for example, in this example, you see already that the Bell MTS is the donor that provide this award. And it's valued at 1,100 Canadian dollars, right, per each scholarships. And there's only 3 scholarships available. So that means in this type of scholarship, you will need to, like the faculty will need to identify the 3 awards give to the students. So this means you have to compete with others people. And you'll see the criteria here. You'll see that this is type of scholarship is available to all students, including international students, indigenous students, and students with disabilities. So that means to be considered for this award, you're going to be competing with a number of people. Another thing you'll notice is that you don't necessarily, when it comes to scholarship, you will not need to apply. You will be identified by, as long as you meet the criteria. For example, the scholarship look for students who have completed University 1 program or, you know, have direct entry into science, direct entry to the Faculty of Science. And you have a minimum average grade point average of 3.5. You see, that's where I was talking about the academic merit is the key, very important. And also, so if you meet these 2, the faculty will bring the students together, bring the list of names together, and then they will use their criteria or their internal consideration to basically pick the 3 students. So this is something that a little bit kind of, you know, even if you meet all of this condition, it's still up to the mercy or the consideration of the faculty to pick the students, okay? So the idea is you don't have to apply for the scholarship. When it comes to scholarship, you will be picked based on the criteria and based on the, you know, specific type of criteria that in the scholarship. The second type of the scholarship here is available to everybody, okay? Again, you will not need to apply for a scholarship as long as you meet this criteria of you are in Canada, you complete 24 credit hours at you show exceptional academic achievement, again, GPA come into place, and you absolutely will continue to the next academic year with full-time status, meaning you have to take at least 24 to 30 credit hours of courses. This, you will be identified and be given what we call the International Undergrad Students Scholarship. And this type of scholarship is based out of the money in the pot that we receive, that the university received from the government, and then they divide it up to the number of students that applicable or eligible in the pool. So there is no specific number of money you're gonna get, but rather depends on how many people meet this criteria. You can imagine that there's not gonna be a whole lot that receive a GPA of 3.5, right? So the key here is if you want to be considered for any type of scholarship, you want to make sure that your GPA is 3.5 or higher to begin with, okay? So that's realistically speaking. All right, so that is basically scholarship. Now moving on to another type of financial support we call bursaries. The difference between bursaries and scholarship is this. Bursary focusing on your financial needs. So you cannot, people will not know your financial needs unless you declare it, unless you apply for it. And that's why with bursaries, you will always have to submit an online application for bursaries. Quick note for international students, you will be eligible to start applying for bursaries once you're in the 2nd year. So in your 1st year, when you apply to us, the entrance scholarship is going to be the main thing. And once you pass your 1st year, then the 2nd year will be those scholarships that I mentioned about after you become a student. And also you can apply for bursary as well. You notice that when it comes to bursaries, you don't have to have a GPA of 3.5. Actually, you just need to have a 2.0 GPA to begin with, and you also have to have a full-time enrollment. In addition to that, you need to submit an online application for it. And bursaries will be, again, it will be a little bit more of, you don't pick and choose the type of bursaries. You apply as one big application, and then the financial aid and awards team will basically identify and basically they divide them up so that everyone gets what they deserve to have. And a quick note that I've learned, the tips, internal tip is that it based on how much money you spend, meaning on your tuition. So for international student, you pay more, chances are you're probably gonna get more of a chance of receiving bursaries. Another question that we get asked a lot is, as I mentioned earlier, in order to come to Canada, you need to apply for study permit. And in your study permit application, your parents need to provide a sufficient funding. So the question that I receive from international students in regard to bursary would be that, the parents are not super poor, obviously, because, but at the same time, you want to help them, right? You wanted to, so just so you know that the financial aid and award team will not be looking at the fact about the study permit, sufficient funding, but rather you have to be able to outline why you would be considered for bursary. For example, maybe your parents are, doing their best, but you want to be able to help them. You want to be able to support and filling up the gap of all those costs that, it might be so hard for them to fulfill. That would be a decent or reasonable ground for bursary to be considered, just so you know. Okay, now I'm going to move on and tell you a little bit about the bursary. So applications is required for you to complete. And again, you will only be complete this bursary application in your second year. So at the first time when you're coming in, you won't meet the eligibility to do that. And usually the application will be up and running and you need to submit it by a certain date in a year. Now, don't worry about this, that you need to remember all of this information. Your academic advising team or your department, your faculty will be the best resource to reach out to once you start your journey at the university, okay? So just laid it out for you, but again, realistically speaking, you will have the support from your institution, from your department or your faculties when it comes to this type of financial support. Moving on, another type that a lot of students thinking about as well, which is they plan to work part-time or work while they're studying in order to help support them financially. And at the University of Manitoba, it is allowed. You actually, as an international students, you can actually work on campus or off campus. On campus, you are allowed to work to a certain hours of work based on your study permit condition. And as far as I know, I think it's around 20 hours a week, but that can change, so don't quote me on this, okay? And realistically speaking, would that allow enough money to cover your tuition? The answer is definitely no, right? It's not. So let's talk a little bit about that. So yes, as a U of M student, you will be able to work part-time on campus while in school, and when school is on break, you can work full-time. You can also work off campus as well, but let me tell you that when you work, it definitely takes time away from your study and it impacts your overall grade point average. So remember, we were touching on the scholarship and the fact that the 3.5 is a minimum. You want to make sure that you want to set up your priority, Just want to let you know that there are career services department on campus that can help walking you through how to write a resume. It helps you, connect with career, what's important for you to be able to gain the type of employment that will actually benefit you in the long run, okay? And we also have work-study program and so much more. Another type that become very, very popular to the student is the cooperative education option and research opportunities. Especially going back to the fact that we are research-intensive university, this is a great place for you. And the specific benefits that you can get from the co-op and research type of work is the fact that it's directly related to your area of studies. And it's usually kind of open up your connection and network for future employment in the future. And that's why we want you to focus more on this type of employment than, perhaps working part-time at McDonald's, for example, because that won't be, I don't know if that will be your ideal job in the future. Now let's talk a little bit about, again, addressing on this myth. Sorry about that. When it comes to choosing a job, part-time job, things like that, remember there are certain things that will impact this ability. First, remember your study permit come with the conditions. You absolutely will not want to breach that condition because it will impact further if you want to apply for a postgraduate work permit. All of those, everything that you do in your study permit or in Canada, it's recorded. So you want to make sure that you follow the rules and you fulfill the conditions, right? So this will definitely have a long-term impact on your future later, especially if you want to remain in Canada, want to gain some work experience in Canada, you want to make sure that you follow your study permit conditions. And the second thing to keep in mind is your realistic expectation when you are in school. If you want to get that GPA of 3.5 or higher, doing a part-time job will definitely impact that ability, right? No matter how smart you think you are, realistically speaking, it's the effort. It's not just the intelligence, but rather also the time that you put into the investment of time, the investment of focus, right? You want to make sure that you balance these priorities and know exactly the reason why you're in Canada studying. You want to succeed and finish your degree, right? So you want to make sure that that is being touched on. All right, so now I'm going to move on and share with you a few of the tips for success. The first thing is, again, whatever I'm telling you right now in this presentations can change, right? It is very important for you to do your own research. And the best place right now is that everything is kind of offered online, so it's pretty, you have access to information online 24/7. So do your research. Don't ever listen to people and believe in it entirely. Do your own research as a backup to make sure. And this is where, going back to scam or things that, out there online, this is going to help you to not become a victim of all those fraud or scam, right? So do your research and manage a realistic financial plan. Again, if you don't have any backup at all to pursue this study abroad, then maybe perhaps you need to sit back and think twice about, okay, what would be more realistic about this for you? And knowing that it is worth your time to do your research, to set your priorities, to do things. I mean, sometimes students feel the pressure to work while they studies, but is that a good advice, right? Is that smart? What does it impact your overall goal, right? So keep that in mind. And again, you get what you put in, the more effort you put to your studies, the better grade you're going to get, hopefully. And of course, that may result in connection in terms of opportunities and awards in the future. And don't take yourself out of the running. Sometimes the term scholarships and sound intimidating because we feel like in order to get the scholarship, you have to be like that high level, great, the best students. Sometimes it's not really, sometimes it's really about applying at the right time, applying and being considered. So never take yourself out of the running. And again, at the end of the day, know your finances realistically speaking. All right, so now I'm going to move on and tell you a little bit about opportunities and events out there. Just so you know, we currently offer virtual campus tour, and this is a great place to start because it allows you to be able to know more about our campus. It's a beautiful campus, but also know more about what we have to offer as well. And because it's now currently offered virtually, if you're interested, go to our website, umanitoba.ca/campus tour to sign up for one of these things. And we are returning back to campus. So I'm not sure how long this virtual campus tour will be offered, but in the meantime, it is still offered. So please take advantage of it. We also offer information sessions online. This will most likely stay for a long, long time. If you're interested, please sign up for it. So all of this information might be like, maybe you're just in grade 10, maybe you start planning, for a near future, maybe 2 or 3 years from now. If you are interested, we highly encourage you to join our online mailing list. I have a QR code right here. If you want to just point your camera, your phone camera to it, it will take you to the website and hopefully you can join us, sign up. This will allow us to send you communications on a monthly basis. So once a month, maybe there's opportunity coming up or events coming up on campus that you're interested in, this will be a great place for you to be kept in a loop of all those information. And last but not least, our email contact. If you're interested and wanted to learn more, of course, reach out to the global education team. They're great. But if you want something more specific and you want to contact with us directly, feel free to email us at student_recruitment@umanitoba.ca. If that's concerning specifically financial aid and awards, for example, scholarships, bursaries, email awards@umanitoba.ca. All right, so now that's the end of the presentation. Hopefully that's decent and informative.
So Jitra, I was listening into that webinar as you were talking there, and I was like, I wish I knew that. I wish I knew that when I applied. I think it's really important that you did this financial one, because I just think it's such a great asset for kids to be aware of while they're doing their research, how to look for it, why to look for it, and the things to be aware of, I think were some of the most important things I took away. And the tips to success page, I took a screenshot of that because we're definitely going to share that with the team. I thought it was brilliant as well. So thank you again. I wanted to ask you a question from the team here at Global. Your experience at Manitoba, you had some positive things to say. How did you find the teaching environment at Manitoba in comparable to some of the bigger universities in the United States and in Canada as well? Could you give a bit of insight into that for us?
Absolutely. Thank you, George. That's a great question, because I guess from the student's perspective, right? Right now, you're looking for the best opportunity that suits you, right? So I think the bottom line here is that what is suitable. Every institution is going to have what strengths about them, weaknesses about them. Now, since I never been to the States to study, so I'm not going to be able to really quite compare, but I guess what I can do is I can tell you what my experience at the University of Manitoba is like then. So as I mentioned earlier, we are a research intensive university. So what students can expect is that we're going to have a kind of classes that you need to focus and do well academically. So it's almost like a running, like a little humor within us internally that U of M, it's easy to get in, but it's very hard to get out because getting in admission is quite easy. It's not too difficult. But once you're in, students tend to kind of like have to adjust quite significantly because the level of classes and the level of work that they're going to be doing, it's going to be pretty up there because we're a research intensive university. Our job is to train you to do research, to train you to be the leader in academics. So this is what our identity is. And so it's going to fit a type of students that focusing on that, who wants to perhaps becoming a professor eventually or want to do research, eventually. But yet at the same time, we offer a lot of support for students. For example, we offer writing tutors. I mean, the aspect of writing university paper can be quite intimidating. And a lot of time, students coming from a different culture, it's a little hard. But the good news is those kind of supports are available free of charge. So it's available to all University of Manitoba students, but all students need to do is to reach out. So another aspect of what to expect is that a lot of the supports and services are out there, but you as a student need to be able to do your research and reach out. That's another big thing because we don't hold hands.
Yeah, I think it's one thing that I took back from my own tertiary education career was I wish I took advantage of the support services. You get involved in your undergrad and you're in your first year and you're kind of cruising, and it just starts to pick up in the stress and the anxiety. And that's where those support services really do well. And we see it with our students, the ones that do take advantage of those support services, they really excel very, very quickly. So Julia, we were speaking about entry into Canada and sort of having to prove the tuition with the visas and all of that side of things. With studying in Canada, do they limit the numbers with undergrad or is it like the postgrad, which is quite difficult? We get a lot of inquiries for kids that want to study, but they're very nervous to apply because they fear of so much for the visa process for Canada.
Yeah, and Josh, unfortunately, since I don't work for the study permits or the visa office, I may not be able to quite, pin it down or discussing in this particular matter, but in my own experience, Canada is pretty open, right, when it comes to this, but the financial aspect is one of the main criterias. And again, that's kind of go back to the realistic expectation when it comes to financial planning, right? If the students don't quite have the backup financially, it's going to make it tough for them to be able to prove that to the visa office that that they will return back to the country. But that's all I'm going to be mentioning about in this topic.
I think it's really good that you mentioned that. And to people listening in on this webinar, especially for the recording of this webinar, Global helps in identifying the tuition side of it, putting all those costs at the very beginning so you know what to expect and how to plan. So I do suggest take up those free consultations. They're all free. All the services are actually free, and find the right information. The one thing you'll hear in this presentation, if you share it with friends and family, is Sujitra talking about misinformation. And the biggest problem with the internet right now is you can Google search something and find a whole range of information that really is not pertinent or factual, accurate to your own needs. And that's the most important thing here. And that's why we are doing all these webinars to get the most up-to-date information. We could record webinars 2 years ago and reshare them, but we want to have Sujitra and the representative speaking directly to you where we can press a button and then reshare it. So please, if you have any questions, Sujitra is here with me. I'm here and we're more than happy to answer them. I think we've just got one question come through. Oh, Bridget saying, thank you for the webinar. Bridget, thank you very much. We really do appreciate the feedback. If you could put that in the survey afterwards, I'd really appreciate that as well.
Yeah, thank you, George, for mentioning that. And this kind of go back to, again, it's definitely, there's a lot of scam out there, to be frank. And, a number of times we receive an email in our student recruitment inbox from the students that kind of mention, oh, they work with someone, and then that someone just turned out to be like not exactly, don't have a true intention of helping them. So that's why to the audience in this webinar here, if you're looking, you want to make sure that you do your due diligence or seeking information from the place that you can trust. And global education is a place that even the university, like our university, I absolutely trust George that he will deliver information that is truly accurate. So, there's a good reason why we're doing this with global education.
Sujitra, what's one question from the counselors here is, oh, sorry, I just got a message pop up. Sungai, thank you so much for this. Sungai, thank you very much. Really do appreciate that. Sujitra, the question was from one of the counselors here. In terms of an application, and this is going to be quite vague, so please bear with us. In terms of an application, what are some of the tips that students should be aware of? Should the essays or statements or what's one thing that you would prioritize on the application?
Absolutely. Thanks, George. That actually is a good question. When it comes to admission criteria at the University of Manitoba, first, we don't look at the age of the students. Like if you're young, if you're old, we don't look at that at all. We're looking at your academic credential. And for those of you who do a little bit of a searching, or research for University of Manitoba, you notice that most of our programs, there's 2 types of entry options. And I think the 2 types are the direct entry, which means students apply directly from high school, therefore the entrance scholarship and all of that I mentioned about earlier, and the advanced entry option, which means students apply as a transfer students. Now, the most important thing to note in this regard is that it's not an option for students. For example, if you already are a student in universities, maybe in your 3rd year, you cannot really omit that whole part and choose to apply as a direct entry because, clearly our admission team has the obligation to investigate and basically really clarify this out. So that's one thing to note. The other thing to note, as I mentioned earlier, it's all about academic criteria, right? For example, if you are in South Africa and you all understand that in order to graduate from the high school system here, you need to go through an examination, right? The national examination, and that will be what we use. So there's no essay. We don't use SAT, ACT, or letter of recommendation. We don't do any of those things. We literally looking at your result from the national examination. So my one tip would be do really, really well there and get a good grade as best as you can.
I think you made a lot of parents listening on this very happy.
Yes. And that's also include the criteria for scholarship as well, right? So
yeah, it's hand in hand. And, you know, the more prepared you are from high school, and especially in those last 2 years of high school, it'll make your life so much easier in that first and second year, especially that first year. I really do recommend that. You know, take the time.
Right. Sorry, George, for interrupting. I forgot to mention another thing, which is also a commonly asked question about the English language proficiency. Good news is, if you were born in South Africa and you are holding the South African passport, you will be qualified for a waiver of English proficiency. So you don't have to worry about applying for, you know, English proficiency tests or anything like that. Now, I'm only covering the part about admission. Okay, study permit is a different thing. I'm not touching on that, but when it comes to admission process, if you are South African citizen or you were born in South Africa, you will be qualified for a waiver of English proficiency.
And for everybody listening on that, so you're just talking about the admission side. When it comes to the study visa and the study permit, that's when we will support you, and that's based on a entirely different process. And we will go through that before you even apply to make sure that everything is looked after while you're conducting your initial research. And that's the one thing that we'd like to both say to you here is do the research, get in touch with Global. We'll help you with your application, get you in touch with Sujitra. She's available all the time. She's sitting in Canadian time zone. We're here in South Africa. You know, she's been gracious to join us at our time. You know, it's really important. And in South Africa and Zimbabwe, our culture is face-to-face. We like to know where we're going to send our kids. We like to know where we're going to go. And with the pandemic, these virtual consultations and virtual webinars have really opened up where you can meet and learn and speak with us. So I do ask, if you do want to have a contact, we can meet you over the phone, virtually, or in person as well in Zimbabwe and South Africa. And we can gladly hook up Sujitra through a web call as well till we get her in South Africa and Zimbabwe for a tour, hopefully in the not too distant future. I've got one more question, Sujitra, and I think then we can close up. If anybody has any more questions, please put them through in the Q&A on the chat box. What's one of the things that, this is from one of the counselors, what's one of the things you like at Manitoba? And the second question is, what's the first thing you would recommend to a student to go and do once they arrive?
Okay, great question, George. So one thing that I really appreciate about, I guess maybe not particularly at the university, because I went through University of Manitoba, but where I live right now in Winnipeg, I think one thing definitely that I'm grateful for is the fact of the opportunities, okay? The opportunities to work here, the fact that the city is so diverse. We have, like, you know, when you come to Winnipeg, the first thing you notice is that people look all different. You know, it's not meant, you're gonna see different colors, you know, people's skins, you're gonna see that, and you're gonna see people with different accents. So it's a place that is welcoming, and it just makes you feel like, okay, I will be considered, like, you know, when you apply for a job, your employer will be looking at you of your skills, and they're not looking at your skin color. They don't look at your accent so much, because it's quite a common theme here, right? Everybody's that. In fact, maybe when you apply for a job, you might come across your employer who's absolutely come from the same background as you, you know, from your community, things like that. So it's a really welcome place. That's one thing I love about it. And the fact that the air here is super clean. And I guess in South Africa, you guys you might not kind of realize this, but a lot of places in the world now has a lot of air pollution, but Winnipeg is not one of those places yet. Because the way we are, you know, the winter actually come and kind of clarify and really clean the air, so that it's really, really, yeah, I've been living here and I really truly enjoy the clean air that I breathe in, right? You know, those are two things. And one of the things that I would recommend students to do absolutely once they get here is to absolutely take your time and visit the famous attraction in Winnipeg, which is, we have a few, the Museum of Human Rights, which is the only federal museum, one of the biggest in Canada, that highly recommend you to come, especially they host an exhibit about many places and many heroes in the world, including, of course, the late Nelson Mandela also. So if you wanted to see that, through a different eyes, please, you need to come and see it yourself. And we also have the Fort, which is a great place for people to hang out. This is where you're going to be seeing a lot of people enjoy different kind of cuisines, offered here. So yeah, those are the two places for sure that I would highly recommend students to check it out.
Brilliant. So Judra, thank you very much. It was awesome to speak with you and to hear and to learn from you as well, most importantly. I'm going to share your contact details and the video and the recording with everybody. You will receive a survey result. Everyone will receive a survey question, please do take the time to fill in if you can. And to everybody who wants the recording or wants to have a consultation, please do contact us, and more than happy to help you as well. So Judra, I'm going to leave you to close the webinar out. And again, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, George. And thank you so much, everyone. We look forward to welcome everyone on campus in the near future. Bye for now. Have a good evening, everyone.